Storing in honey. Storing food in raw honey is one of the oldest preservation methods still practiced today. Among traditional communities, including the Amish, honey is treasured for its antibacterial properties and ability to prevent mold and yeast growth. Submerging fruits, herbs, or even nuts in raw, unfiltered honey slows decay and intensifies flavor over time. Choose clean, completely dry produce to avoid introducing moisture that could ferment. Use sterilized jars and keep them tightly sealed in a cool pantry. For extra variety, try layering herbs like thyme or rosemary into the honey for added culinary use in marinades or teas later. Vinegar fermentation. Did you know that vinegar not only preserves food, but also enhances gut health through fermentation? Generations of off-grid households like the Amish use vinegar to pickle vegetables and extend shelf life without refrigeration. Vegetables such as carrots, cauliflower, and jalapenos are often submerged in spiced vinegar brine and stored in sterilized jars. The acidity kills bacteria and maintains freshness for months or longer. Avoid using metal lids without protective lining, as vinegar can corrode them. For a flavor boost, add peppercorns, garlic, or bay leaves to your brine before sealing for long-term pantry storage. Lard and tallow storage. Fat-based preservation is incredibly effective when refrigeration isn't an option. Lard and tallow, rendered from pork and beef respectively, are still used by Amish homesteaders to preserve cooked meats in jars. The hot fat creates an airtight seal, protecting the food underneath. Once cooled, the fat hardens and shields the meat from bacteria and air. Always use freshly cooked meats and avoid touching them with bare hands during packing. Keep jars in a root cellar or cool cupboard. Check that no meat is exposed above the fat line, and add extra melted fat if needed over time. Cheese waxing. Preserving cheese with wax allows it to age gracefully outside the fridge. In homesteads and traditional communities, this method keeps hard cheeses like cheddar edible for years. Cheese must first dry at room temperature to develop a rind. Once dried, it's dipped multiple times in melted food-grade wax. This process prevents air and moisture from spoiling the cheese. Store waxed rounds in a cool, dry place, away from direct sunlight. Rotate every few weeks to avoid uneven aging. If you see cracks in the wax, re-dip with fresh melted wax to maintain a secure seal. Pickling lime for vegetables. Pickling lime, or calcium hydroxide, helps keep vegetables crunchy during long-term preservation. Many traditional canners and Amish households use this method to maintain crispness in foods like pickles and green beans. Vegetables are soaked in a lime water solution for several hours, then rinsed thoroughly before being added to vinegar or brine. Lime acts as a firming agent, especially useful when preserving items with softer skins. Always use food-grade lime and avoid aluminum containers, which can react with the solution. For best results, store finished jars in a cool, dark location to retain both texture and flavor. Butter to ghee conversion. Turning butter into ghee is a shelf-stable preservation method used across both Amish and global traditional kitchens. Ghee is clarified butter with the milk solids removed, making it less perishable and suitable for high-heat cooking. Simmer unsalted butter until the solids separate and sink, then strain through cheesecloth. Store the golden liquid in airtight jars at room temperature. Ghee resists spoilage and can last for months without refrigeration. Always use a clean, dry spoon when scooping from the jar to prevent contamination from moisture or particles. Pressure canning. Pressure canning allows safe storage of low-acid foods like beans, stews, and meats for years. This method reaches higher temperatures than boiling, killing bacteria like botulism that could otherwise survive. While often used by Amish households, it's now a go-to for preppers and homesteaders alike. Always follow USDA-tested recipes and processing times. Inspect seals after cooling to ensure airtight jars. Label each with contents and date for easy rotation. When storing canned goods long-term, place jars in a dark, temperature-stable pantry away from humidity and direct sunlight. Drying meat. Drying meat without refrigeration works remarkably well when combined with salt curing or smoke. Thin strips of beef, venison, or even turkey are marinated, salted, then air or sun-dried in a clean, dust-free space. Communities that live off-grid, including the Amish, hang meat in screened boxes to deter pests. Once dried, meat can be vacuum sealed or stored in airtight tins. For extra longevity, combine drying with light smoking. Always check for dryness by bending a piece. It should crack, not bend fully. Store in a moisture-free container for best results. Cropping for storage. Organizing crops for extended storage begins with harvesting at peak maturity and handling produce gently to avoid bruises. Heirloom farmers and Amish growers often select varieties bred for longevity, like storage onions or winter squash. After harvesting, cure vegetables in a dry, well-ventilated space before storing. Label bins or shelves with harvest dates and rotate older produce forward. Use crates, straw-lined boxes, or hanging nets depending on the crop. Keep root cellars at optimal humidity and temperature ranges to reduce rot and sprouting. Inspect weekly for soft spots or pests, and remove compromised items quickly. Grain storage in barrels. Long-term grain storage is most effective when done in sealed, food-grade barrels. Wheat, oats, and corn can last for decades if kept dry, oxygen-free, and cool. Homesteaders and traditional communities often add oxygen absorbers or diatomaceous earth to deter insects. Barrels should be BPA-free and tightly lidded. Store them off the ground on pallets to prevent condensation damage. Rotate contents every few years for freshness. If needed, test moisture with a hygrometer. Anything above 13% may lead to spoilage. Label each barrel with grain type, storage date, and any added treatments. Smoking plus canning. Combining smoking with canning offers dual protection for meats and fish. First, lightly smoke the food using hardwoods like apple or hickory, which both flavors and begins the drying process. Once cooled, transfer to sanitized jars and pressure can according to tested safety guidelines. This two-step method was popularized in remote and Amish areas where electricity isn't guaranteed. Smoking helps extend flavor while reducing moisture. Always use clean hands and equipment during packing. Store finished jars in a cool, dark pantry and label each clearly for tracking shelf life. Spice preservation. Did you know that whole spices can last up to 4 years if stored properly, while ground spices lose potency much faster? Traditional homesteads and Amish pantries prioritize spice preservation using airtight glass containers, often sealed with wax or kept in cool, dark root cellars. Oxygen, light, and humidity all degrade spices quickly. Using bay leaves in spice jars can deter insects naturally. Avoid plastic bags, which allow moisture seepage over time. Rotate your spices yearly for peak flavor, and label each container with both purchase and storage dates. Fruit leather. Transforming fresh fruit into fruit leather is a sweet, practical way to preserve harvests without refrigeration. This method involves pureeing ripe fruits, spreading the mixture thinly onto parchment or dehydrator sheets, and drying until leathery but pliable. The Amish often store these in wax paper and stack them in tins for long-term use. Flavor combinations like apple cinnamon or strawberry rhubarb work well and require no added sugar. Store in an airtight container in a cool, dark area. For best shelf life, vacuum seal and include an oxygen absorber in each package. Water bath canning. Water bath canning is ideal for preserving high-acid foods like tomatoes, jams, and pickles. Used for generations in off-grid communities like the Amish, this method relies on boiling jars long enough to kill bacteria and create a vacuum seal. Sterilizing jars beforehand is crucial, and processing time must match food type and jar size. Always test lids for a firm seal after cooling. Label each jar clearly with contents and date. Store in a dry, temperature-controlled space. Avoid stacking jars without barrier layers to prevent accidental seal failure from weight pressure. Root cellaring. Storing vegetables in root cellars is an ancient preservation method still used today by many rural families. Root cellars provide naturally cool, humid conditions that keep foods like potatoes, carrots, and beets fresh for months. The Amish often segment cellars by crop type and layering materials like sand or straw for moisture control. Ventilation is critical to prevent mold and ethylene buildup. Check stored produce weekly for signs of rot or pest activity. Wooden shelving or hanging baskets can maximize space and airflow. Rotate contents regularly and remove anything showing soft spots or sprouting. Charcoal or ash storage. Using clean charcoal or wood ash as a storage medium helps extend the life of root vegetables and even eggs. Ash creates a dry, oxygen-limited environment that prevents decay and pests. Traditional households, including many Amish farms, store carrots, turnips, or eggs layered between sifted ash in wooden boxes. Be sure the ash is from untreated hardwoods and fully cooled before use. Never wash the vegetables before storage. Only brush off excess soil. Keep the containers in a cool, dry place, and check monthly for signs of moisture or spoilage. Stone-packed barrels. Storing food in stone-packed barrels helps prevent shifting and damage over time. This method involves layering food items, like apples or cabbage, with smooth, clean stones in large wooden or ceramic barrels. The stones keep the produce stable and add thermal mass, maintaining a steady temperature. Amish and Old World farmers have long used this technique, especially in root cellars. Always choose firm, unblemished produce and inspect regularly for spoilage. Cover the top layer with straw or cloth to reduce light exposure. This method works best when barrels are kept off damp floors using wooden slats. Cold springs. Natural cold springs can act like old-fashioned refrigerators, cooling perishables in a sustainable way. Communities without electricity, including the Amish, use spring houses or submerge sealed containers in spring water to preserve dairy, root vegetables, and canned goods. The consistent temperature, usually around 50 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, slows bacterial growth without the need for electricity. Ensure containers are watertight and elevated from sediment. Springs should be monitored for runoff or contamination. For best results, rotate foods regularly and mark storage dates on containers using waterproof ink or metal tags. Rotating stock. Smart preservation includes not just storage, but management. Rotating food stock is a time-tested habit in off-grid and homestead settings, ensuring nothing goes to waste. Label everything with dates and group by shelf life. Keep the oldest items at the front so they're used first, reducing spoilage. Use crates or stackable bins to sort by food type. Even dried goods benefit from rotation to retain peak flavor and texture. Keep a log or inventory for easy tracking. For added control, color code bins or use chalkboard labels to manage rotation visually. Onion and garlic braiding. One of the oldest ways to store alliums is to braid their stalks and hang them in a cool, dry place. Onion and garlic braiding not only looks beautiful, but keeps the bulbs ventilated and off damp surfaces. Choose firm, well-cured bulbs with stems still attached. Weave them into sturdy braids using twine or just their own stalks. Hang them in pantries, sheds, or covered porches away from direct light. Check periodically for sprouting or softness. To extend life further, dust bulbs lightly with wood ash or wrap with breathable cheesecloth. Sun drying and dehydration. Harnessing the sun to preserve food has been used across generations and geographies. Whether drying herbs, fruits, or meats, this technique removes moisture and halts bacterial growth. Amish communities often build screened drying racks and place them in full sun during dry, breezy weather. Proper air circulation is key to avoid mold. Flip items daily for even drying and cover loosely to keep pests away. Once fully dried, store in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers. For faster results, solar dehydrators offer efficiency without electricity. Always label each batch with the drying date. Salt curing. Preserving meat with salt dates back thousands of years and remains effective in non-electric homes. Salt pulls moisture from meat, creating an environment too dry for bacteria. Amish butchers often use coarse kosher salt or a salt-sugar mix for this technique. Once coated, meat is stored in crocks or wrapped tightly for weeks. After curing, it can be smoked or kept in a dry, ventilated area. Always ensure meat is trimmed properly and free of excess fat before curing. Sand and sawdust storage. Sand and sawdust can prolong the shelf life of root vegetables like carrots, parsnips, and turnips. These materials buffer temperature swings and regulate humidity. In traditional root cellars or wooden crates, produce is layered between clean, dry sawdust or sand, ensuring nothing touches. Avoid washing the vegetables beforehand, as moisture accelerates rot. This method is particularly useful during long winters in off-grid communities. Keep the crates slightly raised from cold floors and check every few weeks. For added freshness, use fine-grained sawdust and sift out any developing mold or pests. Apple butter and fruit butters. Turning fruit into shelf-stable spreads is a time-honored way to preserve excess harvest. Apple butter, peach butter, and other slow-cooked fruit purees are reduced over hours until thick and dark, developing intense flavor without refrigeration. The Amish often simmer these in copper kettles, then water bath can them for long-term storage. Minimal sugar is needed if fruit is ripe. Spices like cinnamon and clove boost both flavor and preservation. Always sterilize jars and lids before filling. To test readiness, drop a spoonful on a plate. If it doesn't run, it's done. Paraffin wax sealing. A classic preservation method still used in some Amish kitchens, paraffin wax sealing was once common for jams and jellies. After pouring hot preserves into jars, melted wax is carefully layered over the top, sealing out air. While not as secure as modern canning lids, this technique extends shelf life when stored in a cool, dark place. Be cautious. Only use food-grade wax and monitor for cracks. Always cool wax slowly to avoid breakage. As an extra step, store wax-sealed jars in a tin box or wooden crate for added protection. Molasses and maple syrup. Molasses and maple syrup are two sweeteners that can last for years when stored properly. Both have low water activity, making them naturally resistant to bacterial growth. In many Amish communities, these are produced and jarred at home, then kept in cool pantries or root cellars. Metal lids and dark glass bottles help prevent spoilage. Avoid plastic, which can allow air to seep in over time. Stir molasses occasionally to prevent separation. If syrup crystallizes, simply warm the container gently to restore its smooth consistency without compromising safety. Fermentation and pickling. Fermentation is one of the most powerful preservation methods still widely used by off-grid communities today. By letting beneficial bacteria break down sugars in vegetables, the process creates acidic environments that deter harmful microbes. Pickles, sauerkraut, and kimchi all come from this tradition. The Amish often ferment in stoneware crocks sealed with water-filled lids or cloth. Salinity and temperature must be balanced to avoid spoilage. Store fermented goods in a dark, stable environment after the bubbling stops. Always use non-iodized salt and clean utensils to extend shelf life safely. Waxed cloth covers. Waxed cloth wraps have long been a practical choice for breathable, reusable food covers. Made from cotton coated in beeswax, they form a semi-permeable barrier that protects items like cheese, bread, or produce while allowing minimal airflow. This method reduces spoilage without trapping moisture like plastic. While widely used today, communities like the Amish have applied this technique for generations to keep perishables fresh longer. Wash wraps gently with cool water to reuse them. To extend their life, refresh older wraps by applying a new layer of melted beeswax and ironing between parchment sheets. Smoking. Preserving meat by smoking adds flavor while extending shelf life. Once cured, the meat is exposed to controlled smoke from hardwoods like hickory or applewood. The smoke acts as a natural preservative by dehydrating the surface and creating an antimicrobial barrier. Cold smoking keeps temperatures low, while hot smoking also cooks the food. This method works especially well for fish, sausage, and jerky. Avoid softwoods, which produce resinous smoke. Hang meats in well-ventilated smoking sheds for even exposure. Store smoked goods in a cool, dry area. Re-smoke older cuts occasionally if long-term storage exceeds 6 months. Underground burying. Using the earth itself as insulation, underground burying offers a natural, long-term way to preserve perishables. Root vegetables, cured meats, and sealed jars can be buried in cool, dry areas like a backyard pit or sand-lined chamber. This technique, used well before refrigeration, remains popular in off-grid communities. Items must be sealed in moisture-proof containers to prevent contamination. Depth and insulation materials like hay, straw, or sawdust help maintain consistent temperatures. Mark the burial spot clearly and map it for easy access. Store foods in layers for better rotation. Periodically check for moisture seepage or mold intrusion. Blanching before drying or freezing. Blanching is essential before drying or freezing many vegetables. This quick boil, followed by an ice bath, halts enzyme activity that can cause spoilage and flavor loss over time. The Amish and other preservation experts use this technique especially for green beans, corn, and leafy greens. Blanching also helps preserve color, texture, and nutrient content. Time varies by vegetable, usually between 1 and 5 minutes. Drain thoroughly before drying or freezing to prevent ice crystals or uneven dehydration. Always cool rapidly after boiling to prevent overcooking and nutrient degradation. Oxygen absorbers with dry goods. Dry goods like rice, flour, beans, and oats can be preserved for decades using oxygen absorbers. These small packets remove residual oxygen from sealed containers, stopping oxidation and deterring pests. Store items in Mylar bags, glass jars, or food-grade buckets with airtight lids. This method, often used by Amish preppers and homesteaders, is ideal for long-term storage in basements or pantries. Avoid plastic containers that allow air exchange. Don't open the container unless needed. Include a moisture absorber when storing in humid environments for extra protection against mold and spoilage. Stoneware crock fermentation. Fermenting vegetables in stoneware crocks offers flavor, nutrition, and preservation all in one. This old-world technique is still popular in Amish communities where refrigeration isn't always used. Crocks allow gas to escape while keeping dust and bugs out. Sauerkraut, pickles, and kimchi ferment beautifully in these heavy, non-reactive containers. Keep the vegetables submerged under a weighted plate or fermentation lid. Store the crock in a cool, dark place during the fermentation process. Once ready, transfer to smaller jars or continue storing in the crock. Sugar preservation. Did you know that pure granulated sugar can last indefinitely if stored properly? Sugar doesn't spoil because it's inhospitable to bacteria and mold when kept dry. In Amish pantries, it's often stored in airtight containers to prevent moisture from causing clumping or fermentation. Avoid metal containers, which can rust. Food-grade buckets with tight lids work well for bulk storage. Add a moisture absorber for long-term security. Milk to cheese conversion. Turning milk into cheese is one of the oldest and most effective forms of food preservation. Soft cheeses last days, but hard-aged cheeses can be stored for months or even years in cool, ventilated spaces. Communities without refrigeration, like many Amish farms, often press curds into waxed rounds or brined wheels. Aging on wooden shelves allows the cheese to develop flavor and durability. Salt acts as both a preservative and flavor enhancer. Use natural rinds or wax coatings for longer-term protection from mold and bacteria intrusion.